Howdy, howdy, howdy. This is Faceless Opinion. Welcome you back to another video, Red Dead Redemption 2, a game that has received universal acclaim from both the critics and gamers alike. Many consider this game to be a masterpiece, but I have to ask the question, is it? Is it really? I'm not going to say that Red Dead 2 is a bad game. Absolutely not. This is a good game. Is it a great game? For most, yeah, it would be. But a masterpiece? No. No, it isn't. For something to be a quote-unquote masterpiece, one thing it should be is flawless. Nothing less than absolute perfection. And that simply isn't the case with Red Dead 2. For me, there are a fair share of issues with this game, but it also does a fair share of things right. So don't worry, I'm not going to spend the whole video dunking on this game, only when I feel like it deserves it. With that out of the way, let's talk about the highs and lows of Red Dead Redemption 2.
I had a goddamn plan!
Out of all the things in this game, the one thing that I will say that Rockstar did right is the character and story of Arthur Morgan. For me, I think he is the best written character, not just in this game, but in the series as a whole. Dare I say, he is a better character than John Marston was in the first Red Dead. Keep in mind that I loved the first game and thought that John was an absolute legend. For Rockstar to make a character that can reach John's level and surpass it is beyond noteworthy. Now, why do I hype Arthur up so much? The character arc and growth he goes through. When we are first introduced to Arthur, he is a hard and grizzled outlaw, a man who is loyal to Dutch and the Van der Linde gang, doing job after job that is placed in front of him without question. As the story continues on, Arthur begins to question the validity of Dutch's decisions, but continues to go through with them because, as Dutch puts it, it's all a part of the plan, even though these ploys ultimately lead to the deaths of certain members of the gang. But the tide truly begins to change for Arthur when he contracts tuberculosis. Aware that he doesn't have much time left, Arthur must choose whether he should assist the declining Van der Linde gang with their nonsensical plans, or to help those that he cares about, which leads to the final moment of Arthur's story, of helping John escape so that he can live a good life with his family, or to steal the money of the gang that turned their back on him. In my playthrough, I chose to help John, which leads to Arthur dying while watching the sunrise one last time. Arthur's story is a compelling one, and one that shows the type of person Arthur is, or can be. But there is a lot more to like about Arthur. For one, would be his interaction he has with the gang. One of my personal favorites is the mission you do with Lenny, where the two of them go to Valentine and get hammered. Best mission, 10 out of 10. Another good moment would be when Arthur went fishing with Dutch and Hosea. Listening to the three of them talking and singing is a nice moment. Other interactions worth mentioning would be anything involving John, Charles, and Sadie. One thing that I like that was done with Arthur would be his journal. You can open it up and read entries of things that have happened, and as well see drawings that Arthur has made, which consist of animals, plants, and people. It's something minor, but it's the small things that can really flesh out a character. My one criticism about Arthur would be about him having a son, and how it is hardly mentioned at all. It was brought up briefly during a conversation Arthur had with Rainsfall, and when I learned that, I was genuinely shocked by it. You feel like something like that would be, I don't know, important? I guess not. I'm not going to get bent out of shape because it wasn't further explored. It's a small detail and it doesn't really ruin anything. Now, can I get an F in the chat for the absolute legend that is Arthur Morgan?
I had a goddamn plan!
If I had to compare Red Dead 1 and 2, I would say that the first game had the better gameplay. The gameplay in 2 is extremely sluggish, and the controls are stiff, which kinda makes it hard to play at times. The implementation of questionable mechanics don't do the gameplay any favors either. This game is incredibly realistic. Too realistic. You have to cook, you have to dress accordingly for the weather, you have to brush your horse, you have to eat regularly to maintain your health bar, maintain weapons, the list goes on and on and on. I'm surprised they didn't make you take your turn to wash the dishes in camp in order to keep harmony. I thought I was playing a Western shooter, not The Sims. I feel like I speak for everybody when I say that nobody wants to do stupid menial tasks, which only serves as filler. But enough about the small stuff. Let's talk about the big issues. I am not a big fan of the hunting system. The rewards for hunting are pitiful, and given the time it takes to hunt, as well as the lack of space to store hunted animals on your horse, it doesn't help that the pelt quality is a thing. Having to use specific ammo for a specific animal, as well as using as little of shots as possible for a chance at getting a perfect pelt, which you need for crafting, great. As annoying as the hunting system is, it doesn't hold a candle to the atrociousness of the bounty system. Anything you do results in a bounty being put on your head, even if it's something you didn't even do. Find a random body lying on the road, one you didn't kill, and try to loot it? Bounty! Trying to defend yourself from an angry civilian that started attacking you? Bounty! Finish the main story mission and you're about to leave the area? Bounty! Accidentally hit a civilian while riding your horse through town? Bounty! Not to mention, I hate having to deal with witnesses. Intimidation hardly works, and killing them just makes another witness pop up. Besides, where the hell does a witness come from if I'm in the middle of the woods? This is some grade A BS right there. Why is everything so tedious?
I had a goddamn plan!
I want to take a moment and discuss the Van der Linde Gang. I think they're the perfect example of showing the pros and cons of an ensemble cast. With the group consisting of 23 members, barring people who died before the game begins, this is an incredibly large cast, and that isn't even mentioning other people who show up throughout the game, like the Pinkertons, O'Driscolls, Strangers, and literally anybody else. I believe the game does a good job showing those within the group who have a large amount of importance. Characters like Dutch, Hosea, John, and Micah are all examples of important characters within the gang's dynamic, with Dutch and Hosea being in leadership positions, John and his growth throughout the game with the help of Arthur, and Micah, who is shown as sadistic and cruel, eventually leading to him being the one who plays the biggest role in the gang's destruction. Other characters who also have importance to the gang, but aren't on the same level of those previously listed, go to the likes of Sadie, Charles, Strauss, and Trelawney. They all contribute to the gang in their own ways. Strauss's debt collection missions, and Trelawney serving as an informant of sort, while Charles and Sadie being instrumental in the later portion of the game, particularly in the epilogue. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse when we get to the remaining members of the Van der Linde Gang. The rest of the cast can be lumped into two categories, those who have an underwhelming impact in the game, and those whose existence are utterly pointless. Let's start with the former. I would put the likes of Bill, Javier, Lenny, Sean, Kieran, and Miss Grimshaw. I would also add Abigail and Jack to this group as well, but I'm going to be a bit more lenient since Jack is only 4, maybe 5 years old, so he isn't really going to be doing much. And Abigail is going to be taking care of her son, so I'm not going to fault her for that. For the others, I wish we could have seen more from them. Both Bill and Javier played a big role in the first game, and you'd think they would have had more of a presence in this one. But no, they really didn't do anything of note and are quite forgettable. Lenny had some good moments, but the thing that really hurt his character was his death during the Saint Denis bank job, mainly because it was overshadowed by Hosea's, which had happened during the same heist. Let's be honest, Hosea was and is a more important character than Lenny, and as a result, Lenny's death wasn't as big as an impact. Miss Grimshaw, who is best girl, is a total savage. She is not afraid to rough up anybody who decides to screw with the gang. She also runs a tight ship within the gang's camp and takes no BS. It saddens me that she didn't have that many moments to shine. She deserved a bit more in my opinion. Sean had a brief run. He was introduced and killed off in the same chapter. He had promise, could have had more of a dynamic within the gang, but was done dirty. But not as dirty as Kieran. With this guy being a former O'Driscoll, you'd think he would have had a bigger role within that side plot. But no! The only thing he did was save Arthur's life and then fade into obscurity, until the O'Driscolls decapitated him. What a waste. Now we get to the other side of the coin, of characters who bring nothing to the table, like Molly, Tilly, Mary Beth, Karen, Pearson, Uncle, and Reverend Swanson. You would think being the love interest of one Mr. Dutch Van der Linde, leader of the gang of the same name, would merit some degree of significance, but in the case of Molly, It does not. What was the point in making her Dutch's lover in the first place if he doesn't do anything with her? All she does is get pissy and tells him that she sold them out, even though she didn't. I'm still confused by that. Not sure why you would confess to something you didn't do, but it doesn't matter. She was stupid to begin with. Uncle's just lazy, and I only remember him doing like one heist and that was it. The rest of the time he talks about his lumbago. The only other time we see him do anything interesting is during the epilogue. And sure, he helps, but I still don't know why he's here. Tilly is the most interesting compared to the other girls I put in this category. Her side story about her former gang coming to get her could have been good, but underdelivered. There were only 2 missions about it, one in the beginning of the game and one close to the end. With them spread so far apart, players like myself ended up forgetting that this little side story was a thing. Karen helped with the Valentine bake job, but after that, she doesn't do anything. She literally turns into an alcoholic when the gang moves to Beaver Hollow. Hell, she isn't even mentioned or acknowledged in the epilogue. Mary Beth, all I have to say about her is, who that? I'm not joking, guys. I literally forgot she existed. I am sorry, Mary Beth. You deserve better than that. Pearson just stays in the camp the whole time cooking, something that anybody can do. The fact that it's this dumbass's fault that Arthur got caught by the O'Driscolls ticks me off. I really want to bitch smack this guy. Idiot. Then we get to the most useless person of the gang, Reverend Swanson. Why is he here? Seriously, what reason do these guys have for bringing along a drug-addicted minister? The one mission we had to deal with him in the beginning of the game annoyed me. If you ask me, the Reverend would have been better if he was a stranger in Freak mission than someone who was involved with a group of outlaws. I don't hate most of these characters, I just think a good chunk of them needed better writing, but unfortunately they had to suffer from WPS, better known as Wasted Potential Syndrome, something far worse than Arthur's TB.
I had a goddamn plan!
The biggest issue for me when it comes to this game's story would be its pacing, ranging from story beats being picked up, dropped, then picked up again at a later point, to questionable choices all around. Let's start with the one I genuinely have the most issues with, and that would be the O'Driscoll storyline. I feel like the O'Driscolls should have been dealt with a lot earlier on in the game than when they originally were. And the fact that they have instigated many confrontations with the gang, and there was no instance of retaliation, is baffling. You'd think that they would have gone after them when they captured Arthur, at the very least, or at most got back at them when they decapitated Kieran and attacked their hideout at Shady Belle. But no, nothing happened. You'd think Dutch would be ballistic about the whole thing. Oh well, I guess it wasn't a part of his plan. Then we get to the resolution of the O'Driscoll plot when Colm O'Driscoll gets arrested and executed. This isn't satisfying for many reasons. First, Colm was arrested off screen. Second, it's a bit late in the game to be dealing with this and we have more important stuff to focus on. And third, the fact that Colm wasn't off by either Arthur, Dutch, or Sadie, the 3 people who have the most reason to want him dead, doesn't make his death all that cathartic. It is quite disappointing. The epilogue. I wasn't a big fan of it. Now, before you guys get the pitchforks, let me explain myself. It was too long. Way too long to be considered an epilogue. The point of an epilogue is to wrap everything up in a simple and short manner. If I had to make one change to it, I would cut out the first chapter of the epilogue altogether. Why? Because it doesn't really add that much to the table compared to the second half. Most of the main relevant content happens in part 2. Part 1 is just filler. Boring filler at that. I mean, come on. After the epic finale of Arthur's story, we now have to play Farm Simulator for the next few hours? That's a hard pass for me. Guarma. If I had to describe Guarma, it is a turn out of left field. It happens out of the blue and kind of feels out of place, like it doesn't belong here. The only reason I can think that would justify why Guarma is a thing will be to serve as a red herring for Arthur's tuberculosis. It wouldn't be so far-fetched to think that Arthur might have contracted malaria or yellow fever while there. Hell, Dutch even made a comment about the mosquitoes. It would make sense to think that. Now, if I were to propose an alternative to Guarma, it would be this. After the failed Saint Denis bank job, John, Arthur, and Lenny get arrested and are sent to Sisika Penitentiary. While in prison, Lenny would die of dysentery due to the poor conditions inside, while John and Arthur would have to work together to escape. Even get a little help from Sadie and Charles too. When they get out, they have to find Dutch, Javier, Bill, and Micah, who fled to New Austin. It bothers me that the New Austin area of the map was never utilized that much in the story, so here we go. I think that this idea would be a lot more interesting than what we got with Guarma. Just one and a couple of questionable decisions made. I could keep going, but I think I made my point. Well, maybe one more. I'll make it quick though. The stuff with Angelo Bronte was questionable. Jack's kidnapping had no tension whatsoever. If you played the first game, you know for a fact that Jack was going to be fine. I also thought it was weird that Dutch wanted to rob the trolley station. I mean, why? They were planning to rob the bank, which would logically have more money than a trolley station. Besides, robbing a place in the city you plan to do your biggest heist in a short time later is idiotic, since it's going to put the city on high alert. It was also stupid of Dutch to trust Bronte, because did he really expect a guy like Bronte to be okay with a guy like Dutch running around and doing whatever he wanted in his city? I hate to say it, but Angelo Bronte did nothing wrong. But I understand the reason as to why Dutch killing Bronte was important in the grand scheme of things. Alright, that's it. No more lampooning. Let's wrap this up.
I had a goddamn plan!
This game has a lot to offer, from a thrilling single-player story to an ever-growing multiplayer, both of which have hours of content to keep you preoccupied. I know I didn't go into detail about the online aspect, mainly because I don't do multiplayer. It's not my thing. All I'm going to say is that if you enjoy it, then all the more power to you. I want to focus on the core aspects of the game itself, like its story and gameplay, what it did right and what it did wrong. Now, does this game have issues? Yes. Does it make it a bad game? No. Is it a good game? Yes, I would say so. Is it a great game? Sure. Is it a masterpiece? Not even close. Now don't go believing all the so-called critics out there saying that it's groundbreaking, unprecedented, inexperienced, or that's the best game in a generation. That's just paid shills, so take what they say with a clump of salt. If you're going to listen to a critic, listen to one who isn't getting paid. Like me. I'll keep it brief. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a good game, and if you haven't played it, you should. I recommend it. Now be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Leave me a comment and tell me what you thought about Red Dead 2. Until next time, I will catch you all on the flip side.